Welcome back inside our Huskers Radio Network Broadcast Center, which is sponsored by Acres, the Midwest premier John Deere dealer, supplying the equipment and service to advance agriculture and much more. Acres, solutions for every field. Welcome back to Sports Nightly. I'm Jessica Coody, and we've got a treat for you here tonight. Lauren Cook-West joining us here, making an appearance on Sports Nightly. Always love chatting with you. Lauren, thanks so much for joining us and helping us out tonight.
Thanks for having me. Girl power.
Girl power.
The dream team. We're back, baby.
Absolutely. Hey, 5 weeks from this Saturday is the red-white scrimmage. Can you believe it?
I can't. Part of me feels like volleyball season just occurred, and the other part of me is like, wow, we've been waiting a really long time. But I'm ready for this season, and I'm excited, and I think Husker Nation is behind me in saying that with how they finished this past season and just, the mix-up of players leaving and some new players being added onto the roster, how this season is going to look. I think we're all excited to find out.
Well, lots of things that I wanted to chat with, and we'll continue to talk with you leading up to the preseason. But currently, we just had Dream Team Camp, and I know it's become a really, really big weekend for this program. Give us your perspective of that camp, why it's so important, and why you think it's become such a big deal for the Huskers.
Well, those who don't know what Dream Team Camp is, basically it's an invite-only camp. They reach out to the top prospects throughout the country. They're invited to come to this camp. Most show up. They train, they compete like they were a Nebraska volleyball player. So they get that Nebraska volleyball experience. And back in the day, they used to offer players and they would commit on the spot. I think Lexi Rodriguez, she was an example of one of the original Dream Team Camp players who came to Dream Team Camp, was offered and committed. But now, due to recruiting rules, some of that has changed. So it's a wonderful experience. These girls get to train with their peers who are top level volleyball players at the youth level. I think there's a lot of 13, 14-year-olds. You're getting trained, like I said, as a Nebraska volleyball player, and you're getting that Nebraska volleyball experience. So you're in Devaney, you're seeing the locker room. I mean, they're going through, here's how we would watch video if we were preparing for an in-season match. I mean, they're really taking them through what a day in the life. I think they go to the training table, what a day in the life looks like for a Nebraska volleyball player. And so it's really beneficial for some of these younger players to be able to see all that. And then if they love it and it's a good fit with, the Nebraska coaches and these younger players, then hopefully they eventually end up committing to and become a Husker one day.
So if this coaching staff is, evaluating talent at this camp, what are the things that they're looking for to stand out? Because everybody's good that comes to this camp, right? I mean, it's the best of the best. You had some of the top recruits here. So what maybe stands out in a way that, okay, that's something that sticks out that's going to work in this program?
I think the biggest thing they're looking at, because like you mentioned, the talent is there. So these players are good enough to play at Nebraska, but what they're looking at is who's going to be a good fit. And Coach Cook has really talked about within the past few years, and part of his coaching career evolving was not so much he's not looking at the most talented players anymore. He's looking at, okay, who's going to be the best fit? And that includes, hard workers and good communicators and good role models for younger players. And eventually one day when they grow up and are playing at that college or collegiate level. So it's really just looking at who's going to be a good fit for Nebraska volleyball. And I always say that you can have the most talented team in the world with the top talent, but if they don't have the chemistry and if they're not a good fit, then you're not going to perform well. But you could have a team that, maybe doesn't have all the talent in the world. Let's look at Nebraska last year. They maybe weren't the most talented team in the country, but their chemistry, they all fit. They gelled together. Their friendships, their bonds were super strong, and they made it to the national championship match. So it's just, they're looking at, okay, who's going to be a good fit? And there's a lot of different factors that play into that. But I think that's the big thing that Jalen, Kelly, and Coach Cook are looking at.
I've got a chance to chat with a couple of the newcomers, Skylar Pierce and Layla Blackwell, and I loved something that really stood out to me that both of them said was just wanting to be in this gym and compete with the best even if that means they don't have the kind of playing time that probably they could get anywhere else in the country, right? That they want to come in here, compete, and they're not scared of it. What does that say about those kinds of athletes that are coming to Nebraska now that, hey, they want to be a part of that competition, whether that means it might not be the same kind of playing time. And in this day and age, when everybody is searching for that, I feel like, gosh, that is really impactful for me to hear some of these young players have that kind of perspective where they're not scared to come in here and compete. They don't want anything handed to them, I guess.
Well, that's part of that culture, and that, are they a good fit? You want players who will bleed Husker red, who will compete no matter if they're a starting player or, they're on the bench. And that's what you want as, players playing at Nebraska. That's what you want future Huskers to be. And, that's, again, circling back to that, are they a good fit? And that's what you want. And that is, you're spot on, Jessica. I mean, for players to come in and say, hey, I just want to be here. I want to, wear Nebraska across my chest. I don't care if I play or if I don't play, but I'm going to work hard every day and I'm going to bring it and I want to train in this gym. But we also have to remember that, even if, let's say, for example, Layla, you said Layla Blackwell mentioned that. Maybe she isn't a starting middle, but she's going to get NIL deals. She's going to be, one of the most popular women athletes in the state. I mean, when you come to Nebraska, you get so much more than just playing time on the court and being a Nebraska volleyball player. I mean, nowadays it just runs so deep with all the NIL deals and now getting paid to be a collegiate athlete. There's just so much more that she'll get out of her experience, and that'll prepare her, for life post-college volleyball. I mean, and that's across the board for any player who comes through Nebraska. I mean, it's also preparing them for the national team. I know Taylor Lanford, I think she wants to go on and play volleyball at the next level. A lot of these coaches, Kelly, Jalen, Coach Cook, all have experience, coaching at the national level, national team level. And so they know how to get these players ready and move on to the next level if they want to do that. And I mean, look, for example, look who's going to the Olympics. I mean, there's 3 former Huskers on that roster.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So you think about where we were a year ago and the kinds of conversations we were having, just really not knowing exactly how this team was going to shake out with so many young players and so many new faces. But now, coming off the season they had a year ago, and the expectations and just how much the microscope was on this program, even more so, I feel like, just after volleyball day in Nebraska. How does that change an approach to a season for what they're doing right now and when they hit the court for the preseason here in just a couple weeks?
You're right, there's going to be a lot of pressure on this team, a lot of eyes watching them, and they have to find a way to just black out that noise and focus just on the court, next play mentality, not worrying about all this outside noise. And I really do think this team is in a difficult position because of how well they finished last season. You also brought up the Memorial Stadium match. I mean, just a lot of eyes overall are on Nebraska volleyball. And then on top of, how they finished last season, and you have everyone back, you've added some top level players. And so I think the expectation is this team should be making it back to the national championship, but they're going to have to find a way to not let that interfere. And I know as a former player, that can get in the back of your mind and it can mess with you mentally. And hopefully I think this team is strong enough to find a way to work through that and work around that and not let it affect their on the court play. But there's definitely a lot of pressure, definitely a lot of expectations on this team. But Coach Cook, the rest of the coaching staff, they're used to managing these expectations. I mean, this is normal for Nebraska volleyball. It's not like they, suddenly had a big run last year and they've never done that before. I mean, that's normal to have these expectations and this kind of pressure when you're a Nebraska volleyball player.
So let's talk again, just, summer goals and right now, what's happening right now, specifically for someone like Bergen Reilly. Had a heck of a season last year coming off her freshman year, but she played some with Team USA. There's some outside hitters that are coming in, some new players that she's going to be trying to feed the ball to. What's been her goals? What are some of the things that she's been focusing on, needs to focus on going into her sophomore season and really just before you take the court for training camp?
Well, Bergen was so good last year. You're probably all thinking, well, what can she improve on? And there's really not much, but it's just fine-tuning how she was last year, fine-tuning, going into this season, little things like when you back set, going over your right eye, your right shoulder, getting your feet underneath the ball, and just repetition. And that's what she's been getting this summer, playing with the USA team. And then in the gym, she's been training and just getting repetition after repetition, touch after touch. And that's just going to help fine tune her for this upcoming season. But the other thing that I like that you mentioned this, the relationships, that she's going to be feeding some new attackers. And that's actually formed. I mean, yes, it's important to work on the court and to really get the tempo and timing down, because even though you're setting, let's say, for example, on the outside, the ball that Bergen sets to Harper Murray, it's the same set. It's a go. Nebraska calls it a go set. So she's setting to the outside. It's a go set. But Harper is going to hit a different ball than Taylor Landfair is going to attack at. So she has to find, what kind of ball does Harper like? What kind of ball does Taylor like? And even though it's still a go set every time, it's that outside set, the height's going to be different. The tempo is going to be a little different. And so Bergen has to figure that out with some of the new players. And yes, that happens on the court, but it also happens off the court, and just forming those relationships. And setters especially have to have strong bonds with every player on the team, because you're getting that ball from the passers, so you have to have a strong relationship with the passers. And then you're setting to those attackers, you have to have a strong relationship with those attackers. So it's just she needs to be working off the court with those bonds, forming those relationships, and then of course just fine-tuning from last season, little tweaks here and there. They're not changing much, just getting her repetitions and touches on the ball.
How different is it from player to player? Like, is that a lot to take on, to understand? I mean, is everybody different? Are there some hitters that are a little bit the same? Like, I guess maybe for those of us that don't know, what is that like as a setter?
Everybody's different. Everybody wants something different. And that most attackers tell you what you want, what they want, which I always appreciated as a setter. Just, tell me what you want. Let's work through this. I'll get you the right ball. But you have some who are a little more hesitant and won't tell you. But like I was saying, you set an outside set, but all 3 or 4 outsides, Lindsay, Harper, Taylor, Skylar, they're all hitting. I mean, it's 4 different balls that Bergen has to figure out how to set. Same thing on the right side. Same thing in the middle. Layla's not going to hit the same ball that Becca hits. I mean, even though you're setting the same set, maybe it's a quick right off of the setter. Becca's height is going to be different than Layla's height, or her speed's going to be different than Layla's speed. And so, or Andy, I mean, it's just every attacker needs a different type of set, and you have to figure that out as a setter. So Bergen has her hands full. There's really only, I think, 3 attackers who are newcomers that she has to figure out how to set, but that's not too bad, and hopefully she's working on that now.
Do you know immediately once you set something like, oh, that wasn't exactly how Harper likes it, I know it immediately, or is it something you go back and watch film?
Sometimes you know it before it even leaves your hands. You're thinking, oh no, this isn't going to work, and I know this is going to be a bad set, or this wasn't the right decision, or I'm not giving her the right tempo. Or you can see out of your peripheral of, okay, she didn't, her timing on her approach is different than maybe the set that she's calling for. So I'm setting one thing and her approach timing is something different, and it's not going to work out. So setters just have a sixth sense, and they know, and Bergen definitely has that. Her volleyball IQ is one of the best I've ever seen.
Wow. Hey, I've got to ask you, because one of the off-season big news was the schedule release and how they built the clay figures. How did you evaluate some of the volleyball players' skills as clay artists?
I was impressed. There's no way. I've done Play-Doh with my toddler before, and she'll ask for a puppy, or I can do a snake. Just roll out the Play-Doh, make a snake. That's it. Some of these, I think Merritt, or maybe it was someone else. They're making the actual mascot.
Yes.
That's impressive.
No, I was blown away. I could do kind of the same thing. Like if you make like a little nest with eggs and you just roll the balls.
Yeah.
That's about my extent of being able to create something like that.
Hey, speaking of the schedule though, did you look at it?
Yes.
Nebraska, I don't know if you noticed this, Jessica, but Nebraska has a lot of back-to-back matches, and it's actually the most within the Big Ten Conference. This is really interesting. So what you'll see is when you look at the Big Ten portion of the season, Nebraska plays a lot of Fridays and Saturdays, back-to-back matches. And I will tell you what, they are not happy about it, and actually took it up with the Big Ten, and they're working on changing some of those matches to Friday, Sunday. So Nebraska does have a little bit of a rest, but there's teams in the Big Ten who play 0 back-to-back matches. So you tell me how that's fair when you have Nebraska who's playing the most at I believe it's 5 back-to-back matches, and then you have another team who has 0 back-to-back matches. And back in the day when I was playing, there was, I mean, for example, when I was in the Pac-12, everyone played Friday, Saturday, no matter what. So it was even. Everyone had to play back-to-back. Everyone had to travel back-to-back. That I understand. But now with all the shifts in these conferences and all the new teams being added, there's really no way to make it fair, but it's going to be unfair to a few teams. And Nebraska just drew the short straw this year. And if they can't get those changed, then they're still going to be playing the most back-to-backs compared to any other team in the Big Ten.
I got to imagine some of that has to do with the TV schedule and wanting Nebraska to be that team on TV with the ratings they pull in. You'll be a good person, too, to ask about this, because we've talked about this with Jeremiah Searles when he was in the NFL and traveling, in all the different time zones. As much as you think, oh, it's not that big of a deal, he said it was a huge deal, and getting your body adjusted, because you're just not used to it. It doesn't matter if you're playing at 11 a.m. at a certain time and you're used to it being a different time. It's just, it affects you. So I guess how different is that going to be, and how much of an adjustment is that going to be for some of these players? Maybe not as much Nebraska, but some, especially the ones that are going from Rutgers to LA and vice versa.
It's going to be a huge adjustment. Not only the time change, but having to travel, potentially having to do it back to back. I mean, there's a lot of different factors that play into this that will make it very difficult for some of these players to adjust. And you're right, you have the West Coast time, you have Midwest Central time, you have East Coast time to contend with. I mean, it's just across the board. There's a lot of traveling. I talked about the back-to-back playing, which I feel like last year we had a lot of Wednesday, Saturday matches. Now we're seeing some Thursday, Saturday matches. And so playing on different days. It messes with your practice schedule. It messes with your, changing times, playing from a Friday night and then on a Sunday afternoon. That messes with your pregame schedule. So there's a lot of different moving pieces and factors that are going to play into just how difficult it's going to be to just play in a volleyball conference this season, especially the Big Ten.
Absolutely. That I would not want to be the one trying to schedule all that. That's for sure. Hey, another thing I wanted to talk to you about, because this is another thing that's come up. It seems like, again, every year I ask about some of these players and who are their role models and their favorite players. And it continues to be Jordan Larson. And now you're talking about she wasn't even playing when some of these players were born, or the players weren't even born when she was playing here. And she just there's no time, I guess, with her. Time stands still with Jordan Larson, but just what does it say just about the impact of her? I feel like sometimes we might maybe to take it for granted a little bit because she was from here on Nebraska, but on a world scale and on a nationwide scale, all these young volleyball players that they are still continuing to say that was their favorite player. I mean, what does that say about her and the impact she's made on the sport?
It says a lot. I mean, she'll go down as when she does decide to retire. Who knows when that will be? I thought it was going to be 4 years ago, but here she is going to another Olympics, which amazing for her. She's proving that, if you take care of your body, you can continue to play for as long as you want. And I think a lot of players just thought, I'm getting to my 30s. I got to stop. I can't do this anymore. And you used to see a lot of younger players on the national team, but now they're getting older and older, and just proving that if you really do take care of yourself, you can play for as long as you want. So that's part of it. She's kind of paving the path there. And then the other part of it is that she'll go down as one of the best players in the world for, the rest of her life. And I think you'll have players years from now, even when she's done playing, that will continue to say, yeah, I look up to her. I watch video of Jordan Larson playing because she did it so well. And she's just such a good player. Her volleyball IQ is really high. The way she mixes up her shots and serving and passing and everything. I just think that younger players are going to study her for a long time and will continue to say that she's their favorite player.
Oh, I love that. Well, how about that Team USA having 3 Huskers? You mentioned it earlier. That's always good for the recruiting, stays good for the recruiting when you say, hey, if this is where you want to be as a volleyball player, the proof is in the pudding. We've got them on the roster.
Well, and Taylor Lanfear, I mentioned her earlier. The last I heard is she wants to compete at the next level, try to go to the national team. And part of the reason why she chose Nebraska was because she knew that I'm going to get the training that I need if I want to play at the next level. And so I think that's part of it, of why you see some players come to Nebraska. She's just one example, but they come here because they know that, hey, I can play at the next level. I have a chance at making the national team if I go through this Nebraska program, and they're going to get me ready, and they're going to train me, and they're going to give me all the opportunities. I mean, Jessica, look at all the players who this summer were playing with USA teams.
Yeah.
I mean, almost half. And Nebraska's providing them those opportunities. They're opening these doors for these younger players if that's something that they want to go on and do. And so it's really cool. And we may have to look back, but I couldn't tell you the last Olympics where there wasn't multiple Nebraska volleyball players on the roster.
Yeah, we got to have somebody dive into that for sure.
Yeah.
That would be a fascinating fact. Okay. Couple more things I wanted to just ask you about quickly.
Yep.
If anybody missed the latest Kicking Back with the Cooks, it's out. Lots of breaking news, lots of good nuggets in there. But one of those is one of the themes. He announced it to you. Breaking news is Run for the Roses. You're a big fan of that. You like that theme.
It's just so different. Normally it's, unbreakable or, teamwork. It's one word phrases or something simple, and it just means, working together as a team or, with each other, for each other. This is so unique, so different. I love the play on words. I mean, it's Run for the Roses. Has to do with the Kentucky Derby. Horses have been a big focus for this team. And then the Final Four is in Louisville. So it's a play on words. It's something fun, something different, something unique. And I love it.
And the other big news is you guys announced the horse. We had a ton of texts come in, and people have been wanting to know what the horse's name is. It's out. It's Rev, and you also like that too. Was that your favorite name?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Zach Bryan. Have you listened to his new album?
Yes.
Are you a fan?
Yes. Yeah.
I know we're big Swifties, but we can cheat on Taylor Swift and love Zach Bryan as well.
He makes good music. He does, and it's thoughtful. And he might have had some issues, but he's from Oklahoma, so some ties there too. But yes,
there you go.
He's got some good names. Rev also fits just because I feel like it sounds a little bit like an athletic name, and obviously this is a really, really athletic, marquee kind of horse that is going to continue to compete. And so I don't know. I just feel like it fits in a lot of different ways.
It totally fits. It's a tough name. I mean, Rev, short for revival, and I love it. It's another unique name, unique like the motto for the upcoming season, a unique horse name, and it's official. Rev is Coach Cook's horse now, and he's calling him Rev, and Bill Fleming was the one who submitted that. So congrats again to Bill. But it's I think they had 19 submissions for that name. So a lot of people were thinking it and suggesting it. But Jessica, 15,000 overall, or I think it was a little under 15,000 or right at 15,000 submissions for names, which is
that's so cool.
Wild.
So cool.
That's a lot.
Okay, we won't dive into this, but we did want to leave our listeners with a little bit of a teaser. You and I are working on something for closer to the season, diving into maybe more of an X's and O's of volleyball, 101 type segment. I know we get a lot of questions sometimes about rules. There's a couple new rules that are going to be implemented this year to the game going into this season. So you're up for that, right? Maybe diving into what fans need to know. Some new fans, I know, and some even older fans sometimes ask about some of the things and why it is the way that it is. But you're down for that, right?
Absolutely. Can we mention the two new rules?
Yes.
I think probably a lot of people know them, but the two that we'll have to break down and get into are the double contact, which a lot of people I feel like you either love it or you hate it, but they're going to be more lenient with the double contact rules. So if a setter or a non-setter goes up, takes that ball overhand like they're setting, and there's spin, they're going to let it go. The only time they will call it is if there's spin and that ball goes over the net. So let's say Lexi Rodriguez has to step in, set that second contact, and she decides to, side set it over the net, try and catch the opposing defense off guard. And let's say there was some spin on that ball, then it would be called. But if it stays on Nebraska's side of the net, if Lexi or someone, Bergen, is just setting up an attacker, then in their spin, then they won't call it. They'll let them play. So a little more lenient in that category. And then the other one is the 2 libero rule, which will be really interesting to see who uses it, how it plays out. I don't think Nebraska is going to take advantage of it, but you can utilize 2 liberos. So normally we've just seen 1 libero. Sometimes some teams won't even use a libero in certain situations, but now you can use up to 2. Now you can't have 2 on the court at the same time, but maybe you have 1 libero who comes in and is a better passer, and they're in, when you're in serve receive, and then you have another libero that comes in and plays defense when Nebraska is serving. So you can utilize 2 liberos, still only 1 on the court, but you can have two different liberos rotating in and out as much as they want.
Okay, so that was just a little bit of an overview of the 2 new rules. But again, if you have any suggestions of what you want to know more about, you want us to dive into, really take a look at and explain it, Lauren's the person to do it. So let us know. Text us in on our text line. Tweet at either one of us or our Huskers radio account, and we will start accumulating those and get something in the works for closer to the season, which will be here before you know it, by the way. 402-413-2400 is that number to text or call in. Lauren, thank you so much for helping us out. Great stuff, as always. And hey, it'll be here before you know it, and we've got lots of volleyball to talk about between now and then.
Thanks, Jessica. It's always a pleasure talking to you.